first class was admitted. We have been in the business of workforce development. Everything we do is tied in some way, pretty directly to developing people so they can be productive employees and productive productive citizens. If you sort of think back to 1961, the transitions that are taking place in this state were pretty profound. The war was over. There was a large, there were many veterans coming back, and they were taking advantage of the GI Bill. The leaders of this state realized that the economy was shifting from an agrarian to an industrial economy, and they needed a network of training facilities to help facilitate that transformation of the North Carolina population. And so industrial education centers were created, and Durham Tech was among the first to be created in 1961. In the intervening 50 years, we have tried to be responsive to the economic changes that take place in our state, in our community. We are there when new businesses or industries are courted. We're there when businesses or industries go out of business, and help prepare people for the next phase in their lives. Currently, we enroll about 25 or 26,000 individuals in a whole array of classes as a comprehensive community college, and everything we do, as I said, is tied in some way or other to workforce preparation, preparing people to be productive citizens and productive employees, whether it's basic skills for individuals who lack adult high school credentials, GEDs. We prepare people with that credential so they can have the most basic skills necessary for entry-level jobs. A very wide array of corporate and continuing education programs that prepare people for work short-term training programs, and an array of corporate services. Customized training for new industries and businesses. CRE has been in the news here in Durham the past few days, and last year, Durham Tech, in the past year, Durham Tech has trained 300 new employees to work at CRE. As an example, Merck is another of our major corporate clients, and helping those businesses or industries develop their workforce. We work in conjunction with local economic developers at the Chamber of Commerce, and also at the state level with the Department of Commerce and the North Carolina Community College system to help recruit businesses or industries to the region. I think North Carolina has a very forward-thinking, or has in the past, we had a very forward-thinking policy on incentives to bring businesses or industries to the state. And that is to give those businesses or industries a well-prepared workforce. We're not big in tax incentives. What we try to do is prepare people for the world of work, so that if a business comes to the state, they're going to receive a workforce that's well-prepared at no cost to them. And the advantage of that is that the business leaves, what stays behind is a well-prepared workforce to help attract the next business or industry to the area. Our credit programs are also very much tied to the local economy and to preparing people for the world of work. We have an array of career and technical programs in broad areas such as sustainable and industrial technologies, preparing people to work in solar installation and in electronics engineering and things of that sort. Public service programs that prepare people to work as firefighters, police officers, and emergency management personnel. Information technology, computer programming, network administration, network security, business and business programs, business administration, accounting, public service programs of that sort, and health technologies. We are perhaps the only community college of our size, moderate, medium-sized community colleges in the country, to have in its service area, two-county service area, 2 internationally recognized tertiary care teaching hospitals: Duke University Medical Center, of course, here in Durham, and UNC hospitals in Chapel Hill. One of our hallmarks is having a curriculum, set of programs that lead to credentials that is reflective of the demands of the community. And since health technology is deeply important to our community, since we are the community college of the City of Medicine, we have very strong health technologies programs. But even in the transfer area, and Dr. Nelms, and if he can be called Charlie, I'm certainly called Bill, talked about the articulation between community colleges and the universities to help our young people get undergraduate degrees. Even in those areas, the students who come to Durham Tech with their eye on a bachelor's degree have a career in mind. They're coming to us so they can transfer to NC Central or UNC Chapel Hill or NC State to build a career, whether it's in business or in law or in engineering or in health fields. Our students come to us because they recognize at some level that education is the key to a better life for them, and that starts with with a preparation for a meaningful career and a meaningful life.
Thank you. Dr. Webb? Thank you, and good morning. I'm going to deviate a bit from what the moderator's instructions are because I'm going to provide some background information to create a perspective for a theme that I'm going to speak to throughout my presentation. And that theme is something that has resonated with me for more than 30 years, and it's the concept of readiness for training and retraining. Now, I spent 30 years and 6 months at Durham Tech. Of course, as Dr. Ingram pointed out, we were focusing on programs for entry-level skills. We focused on upgrading skills and retraining for those already with jobs. And we also had to spend time addressing some of the educational deficits that adults had. And so we had a wide array of adult basic education programs, GED, adult high school, et cetera. But of course, now that I'm at Duke, and I've been there now, this is my 4th year, I really approach workforce readiness from a different perspective, but still focused on this concept of readiness for training and retraining. So in 1980, when I first became president of Durham Tech, Durham had more than 3,000 cigarette manufacturing jobs in downtown Durham between American Tobacco Company and Liggett & Myers. These jobs, back in 1980, were paying more than $20 an hour. So the average wage of those employed in cigarette manufacturing was more than $40,000 a year 30 years ago. Now, in 1984, and of course, back then we were providing training in both the factories of Liggett & Myers and American Tobacco. Cigarette manufacturing then was a one-step by one-step process with each operator at one machine carrying out a step, and then it moved on to the next. Then in 1984, American Tobacco and Liggett & Myers had invited us in to look at some new cigarette manufacturing machines they're bringing in from West Germany. And of course, they wanted to provide some training for the technicians. So the technology was displacing these workers because these folks that had been doing this step-by-step work were entirely wiped out because each of these machines, loose tobacco went in one side from a hopper. The finished product was cigarettes in a carton wrapped in cellophane. So they only needed one technician for those jobs, someone to calibrate the machine and someone to perform maintenance where necessary. So American Tobacco invited us in, and I went over and met with their officials, and fortunately they'd invite us in about 18 months before they were ready to close the plant down. And they wanted us to help retrain and relocate these workers. Now, we faced a monumental retraining challenge because more than 50% of American Tobacco's 1,700 workers did not have high school diplomas. And the skills they had that they were doing the piecemeal work with were not really transferable to any other job. So essentially, I mean, they lacked the requisite high level of literacy and they had many educational deficits that would have to be addressed before they could move on to another job. Okay. Now, at the same time, as the cigarette jobs were being downsized and essentially eliminated, we began to see the emergence of high technology jobs in Research Triangle Park. So at the same time, we're working with American Tobacco and Liggett & Myers to downsize and retrain those employees. We were working with Mitsubishi Semiconductor on wafer fabrication. We're working with GE Semiconductor on wafer fabrication training, working with Sumitomo Electric on optical fiber manufacturing, and working with Dynamet Nobel Silicon on extrusion and fabrication of single crystal silicon at the same time. Now, the training challenge was the same as the retraining challenge, because we had many adults that wanted these jobs, but that lacked the requisite high level of literacy and had many educational deficits that would have to be remediated before they can move into these jobs. So what I realized then was that the training challenge and the retraining challenge have very similar, or I should say have a common element. And that common element is the need for a high level of basic literacy, which means a high level of reading comprehension, a high level of mathematical comprehension, and good communication skills. Because before you can train someone for a high-tech job, or before you can retrain someone for an emerging high-tech job, they really have to have this high level of literacy. They have to be ready for training and or retraining. So that establishes the context for what I'm going to talk about going forward, because I know many of you have some idea of what Duke University does. It is an internationally known university with 6,000 undergraduate students, about 7,000 graduate students. As Dr. Ingram pointed out, the Duke Health System is internationally known. We have 10 schools and, of course, many graduate programs. But one of the things I'm doing in my office is working with Durham Public Schools to address, this concept that has nagged me for 30 years, and that is ensuring that all citizens in Durham, young and old, have the appropriate level of readiness to make optimal use of and receive optimal benefit from the training and retraining that is available to them. So when we come back around, I'll talk to you about specifically what my office at Duke University is doing to address this challenge of readiness for training and retraining.
Thank you, all panelists, for your introductory comments. Certainly got some interesting points out of this, and hopefully we'll be able to draw these out a little bit more. But the first question I'd like to ask everybody is we're going to kind of start with our questions where we are now and how we're going to be moving to the future. So the first question is, how does your institution view and evaluate its role in preparing students and workers for the current marketplace, and how do you think you are doing? Kind of a self-evaluation here. Please keep in mind for the panelists that companies in our area are continuing to have a hard time hiring technical workers, even in these times of high unemployment. So I'm going to actually start, I thought I would start with Charlie, but I'm going to start with Bill, and we're just going to kind of work our way around the table that way.
Sure. Thanks, Ted. Well, I think answering the sort of the self-evaluation question, we can always do better. I think and this really, I think, relates to Dr. Nguyen's point about readiness for training and retraining. What we are coming to understand about the role that we have to play in technical training and education. We certainly have to provide technical skills for today's workers. But I think that when employers say that they're lacking people with good technical skills, there are fundamental skills that are common to all workplaces that are in many ways as important or more important than technical skills. If you think about what today's workplace looks like, sort of the common elements of today's workplace, today's workers need to work in teams. The idea of a person, as Dr. Nguyen described, the cigarette manufacturing process of 30 years ago, a person doing a particular task as part of an assembly line is gone. And now if people are working together, they're working together in teams. So the ability for individuals to communicate effectively, the ability for individuals to just get along with each other and understand that people are different is very, very important now in today's workplace. Today's workplace is increasingly a multicultural environment. The idea that there's a lot of homogeneity in our society is gone, and you think of the importance of understanding and at least being able to deal with cultural differences is a very important part of today's workplace. I talked about the ability to communicate, the ability to solve problems and to be creative, because today's workplace doesn't rely on the old pyramid paradigm. Folks working in teams have a lot of autonomy. Today's employers expect their employees to be to a large degree independent or autonomous or be able to solve problems independently. And not only is it a multicultural environment, it's a multinational environment. And the importance of understanding that today's marketplace as a global marketplace is very important. So, for one reason, we are increasingly focusing our attention at Durham Tech on those sort of fundamental skills, because those are skills that are transferable. The technology changes, and the technology can change overnight. In 1981, when L&M, Liggett Myers, and American Tobacco were churning out the cigarettes, no one predicted in 1983 that those cigarette manufacturing jobs would be gone, but they were gone in a very short period of time. And we don't know who will be in, who the next Cree will be. We like to think that we know, but we're not sure. So making sure that our workforce is ready, adaptable, their ability to step up quickly and prepare for those new emerging opportunities is very important. The technology changes, and a lot of times the technology is proprietary. But the underlying skills, those basic skills, are very, very important. That's important. That's one reason. The other reason is the technology is very expensive. And although we try to use simulation technology to try to train people with new technology, it's very expensive. If you've been reading the papers at all, things are a little tight in public education in North Carolina right now, and our ability to acquire and invest in technology for training is very, very, very difficult. We need to build partnerships with businesses and industries that need to be to have access to technology. But we understand that what our students need to do is they need to be lifelong learners. They need to learn how to learn so they can be adaptable when the next technological breakthrough comes through.
Thank you. Phil? I'm waiting to hear how you're going to respond to your question.
Well, let me first say that 30 years at a community college helped me to understand the importance of doing a needs assessment before you try to develop a plan of work. Let me also add that in the 1980s, I did a 2-week tour with Mitsubishi Semiconductor in Japan and a 2-week tour with Sumitomo Electric in Japan, because we were preparing to transfer technology, and I went over with some instructors. And one of the questions that I had when I went over there was, so how do the Japanese approach this whole retraining challenge? Well, I discovered that they have such a high level of basic literacy that it's very easy for them to retrain their workers. And of course, they have a team-oriented work culture, always have, and that's made it easy for them. When I went to Duke, the first thing I did in 2008, my first year, was I interviewed every elected official in Durham, all the city council members, all the county commissioners, all the school board members, and our local legislative delegation. And I asked them all, so what do you see as the main challenges facing Durham? And what role do you see Duke playing as a partner in addressing those challenges? The challenges boil down to three things in summary after all these interviews. Number one was sustaining the revitalization and economic development of downtown Durham and pushing that out from the city center to the periphery to bring back in these neighborhoods that had been impacted when the cigarette jobs left. Number two was concern about performance, both individual student performance and school performance in Durham Public Schools. And the third was concern about disconnected youth. And Kevin and Bill and I are all working together on that issue. So from the DPS perspective, I decided to talk with some principals about some of the challenges they were facing, because all of a sudden I realized, okay, this whole readiness for training and retraining, we need to go all the way to the beginning of the educational period to address, whatever issues there are then, so that by the time they get to high school, they are already on track for that high level of literacy that is requisite for success. As a result, my office is running 4 pilot projects, and we've actually moved from the pilot phase to a successful implementation phase. And I'm pleased to say that all 4 have been incorporated into the new strategic plan that Durham Public Schools did release last year. All right, the first of these programs is one we call Stepping Stones, which is a pre-kindergarten program. And you would wonder, well, why in the world are you addressing a pre-kindergarten program? Because 2 of the principals that I spoke with mentioned to me that 2/3 of the students coming to kindergarten at those schools had no preschool experience. They didn't know ABCs, they couldn't count to 10, many didn't even know colors. So if you put yourself in the place of a 5-year-old coming to kindergarten, where some of the classmates, they can read, they know the letters of the alphabet, they can count, and this kid can't. So you think about the first experience in a classroom is one of lowered self-esteem, one of frustration, and essentially it's going to be very difficult for them to move from that point forward. So our Stepping Stones program, which is now in its 4th year and its 3rd iteration, focuses on helping to develop not only kindergarten readiness skills, and things like lining up and raising your hand and using a cubby and getting on the bus, but help develop the pre-reading and pre-math skills that are necessary to help them be successful. So the next step, the most accurate predictor of success in high school and for matriculation to college from high school is end of 3rd grade reading. But for some reason it was puzzling to me, the reading interventions in Durham Public Schools occur after 3rd grade, after the 3rd grade EOGs are in. Of course,